Hello and welcome to episode 116 of the Arena Regulars podcast. I'm Zach,
And I'm Jeff.
and we're your source for drunken Magic the Gathering arena content.
That's right. A couple of regular dudes drinking some irregular beers and talking about Magic the Gathering, in particular the online client, MTG Arena.
And more in particular, this episode we're going to be talking about standard even more than last week, where we were talking about the new standard structure. We got more news coming your way very shortly, but first, each week we both bring a beer. We drink Jeff's, then drink mine, rate them on a scale of bronze to mythic, and choose the best for last. So with that, Jeff, what's on tap?
Okay, I'm super excited. Today, we are continuing our tap takeover of Little Beasts, who have been scoring pretty highly so far. And that's even given that I kind of started with their beers that I was less excited about to get a baseline. And so last week I tried their Belgian single.
Mm-hmm.
And so today I felt like I had to bring the Belgian triple.
Yes.
Um, so this is where you can't follow. It is a triple. It's 9% alcohol and has like a mountainscape, looks like.
Okay, so we were talking about this right before. It looks like this modernist mountainscape, but now when I look at it, it's 100% a horse. That's a horse.
Okay, hold on. Let me
So
figure this
like
out.
so the horse is looking at you, and then this is like the mane, and there's the sky on top.
Oh, that's a
That's
horse.
100% a horse, and there's a grassy field.
Ah, I thought it was like a mountain with like a big fissure, in the middle.
Yeah.
Like the pink was like a subterranean.
Yeah, I thought that too, or something. But then as we literally picked it up to talk about it, I was like, oh, that's a
I think it's
horse.
a horse.
I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure it's a
right.
horse. Anyway,
It's a beast.
it's
A
a
little
little
beast.
beast. All right, let's crack this open, Jeff. And as we pour this into our glass, we have some magic news. This weekend is the Arena Open. So May 20th and 21st. It is the format is Mom Limited. That's March of the Machine. As they've been doing, all these Arena Opens have been limited formats, which I still think is a great way to do it. Makes it a lot easier for folks to actually participate in them. Um, yeah.
You
So
know, I
get.
like it a lot as well because there's enough ways to compete competitively and constructed. But
Mhm.
it does mean for me personally, I tend to play them less because I would only play if I feel really confident and I've been playing a ton of the limited format. And
Yeah.
a lot of the times I like play a bunch and then I move on to constructed. Um, and the arena opens are perfect tournaments, like for me when they're constructed because you can play them whenever you want. But
Hmm.
day two of the limited one has a very specific kind of
Schedule.
cadence. You have to
Hmm.
flow with. Like you have to draft in the first couple hours and then play your games in the next 2, 3 hours and then play the next draft hour or two after that. So it's a little more rigid in structure. And because, I'm these days I'm very much whenever I have time to play kind of thing. The
Hmm.
old arena open structure was a bit better for me, or the one that was constructed or all sealed.
Yeah.
Um, but still, this is a good thing for the community overall. Definitely acknowledge that.
Hmm.
So I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I also don't get a big. I don't have the opportunity to play as much anymore because I've been working on the weekends, so it's really difficult for me to do that. But I'm still happy, and everyone seems to love them still. So it is a great thing. Though Jeff, so last week we talked a lot about the new rotation for standard, which is going to be a 3-year rotation structure instead of a 2-year one, which is a big change. I think the last rotation change was like Amonkhet, where they tried to shorten it due
Right.
to player feedback. But there was a really nice. So we were making a lot of speculations last week about why they were doing this and stuff, and luckily we did get like a weekly MTG video this week um, with a few folks, Blake, William Huey Jensen, and Andrew. Don't remember his last name, talking specifically about bannings and standard and the pro play structure, and it made a little bit more sense why they were doing a lot of these things. So I was happy with that. So if you want to know a bit more about that, go check out that VOD because it was very enlightening. It's nice to hear them explain specifically like this is why we did this. We've thought about these other structures that you've all been talking about. We decided to go with this one because those ones seemed really good, but just ultimately too complicated for just like players to keep up with. The big news though is that there will be a banned and restricted announcement, a very regular one. Now, in the past, banned and restricted announcements have been uh, random, just kind of whenever they want. Sometimes they give you like a week's notice or a few days. They're sometimes on Mondays, but not always. It's like they're like after big tournaments sometimes, and just kind of like you just never really know. Now we get one banned and restricted announcement each year. It will be 3 weeks before the previews of the fall set. So when rotation happens, this next year we won't have rotation, but when rotation normally happens, it'll be 3 weeks before the previews of that next set. They will do a banned and restricted announcement for every format. I haven't talked to you about this, Jeff. So like, what do you think about that? How does that make you feel?
Yeah, so when we talked about the new format rotation last week, basically what we were saying was they're going to have to be aggressive with the ban hammer. If this is the approach they're going, then they're committing to kind of pruning the metagame, because the by far from enfranchised players or even just players really, the biggest complaint is that decks dominate the meta for too long. So they know that and they decide to extend the amount of time. It means they're essentially committing to this. So it's nice to have them come out and just very quickly after that announcement announce this, and just say like, hey, we know that what we said last time means we have to ban stuff. We're aware of that and we're doing it. We're not only are we doing it, we are like putting in infrastructure that forces us to do it.
Yeah. So it almost has this feel of like if things have had their time in the sun and need to rotate out, they essentially rotate out. They just pick the specific cards that have gone too long, and then hopefully other cards from those sets will be able to shine, even though they're still old. They don't just get completely kind of like covered by the good cards. Now, with that being said, um, there will be about after every set releases, uh, 3 weeks after, there's basically like a window where they can ban any immediate problematic cards. Um, these will be primarily for older formats, so not standard, and they will be focused mainly on cards that just like were kind of mistakes. So there are specific examples where like Oko Thief of Crowns and Felidar Guardian. So when you're thinking of like just busted stupid cards that were like, whoops, that just kind of went through, we just they will still do that right after the sets come out, but that will be it's very rarely will that happen, so don't expect that to be a thing. And I kind of hope this makes like ban talk go down like a lot. Like people don't have to talk about like, oh, this is this card gonna get banned, I don't know, which is the point.
Yeah,
Right.
right. I'm surprised they explicitly called out like probably not standard. Like this is already going to be a rare thing, and they
Mm-hmm.
also said not standard. Because I was thinking of this as like the Omnath window, because it's about what it took for Omnath to get banned, and 1,000 standard, right? So um, it feels like it. It feels like they're not really saying anything here. They're just basically saying like we're giving ourselves a window or an opportunity to admit mistakes quickly, whereas before there may have been a bit more like, are we too quick to ban something, blah blah blah. They're just saying maybe they're acknowledging that they'll be faster to do that in the future. Like I didn't really get this part because like they should always be considering whether or not to ban something if it comes out the gate that hot. Like
Yeah, I think it was mainly because they came out and said, hey, we're only going to ban things once a year, except for we are giving us our little loophole that like if something goes wrong, we can do this. And then you won't be like, hey, you said you'd only ban things once a year. And they'd be like, well, you know, we have to do what we got to do. So I think this is just to cover their ass.
I think they should have just said, we're leaving the current system open. We're allowed to ban stuff whenever we want. We will definitely be banning stuff once a year at this time. Like,
Yeah. But like part of it is that like the reason they're making this like format longer is because they want more people to buy cards, and having bans only happen once a year give players confidence to buy cards, knowing like if you buy them in September, you have a whole year to play them before they get possibly banned. Is I think the idea that you feel more
I
confident.
meant in older formats most. Like
Oh,
they're
well,
kind of
sure.
saying this isn't standard. Like in standard, they could say we'll ban at one time every single year, right?
Hmm.
But for other formats, they can ban whenever they want, right? So
Basically, yeah.
this 3 week window feels kind of meaningless
Mm.
when they say that's what I mean when they explicitly say
Gotcha,
this
gotcha.
isn't for standard. It's like
All right,
I don't
now
understand them.
I understand what you're saying.
But
Uh,
anyways, it doesn't really apply to me. So
It
what?
doesn't. Yeah, we're also playing Arena, so like the card
Like I guess
acquisition
explore. I
thing.
don't know.
Yeah, maybe, but like hopefully that just becomes Pioneer soon anyway, in my
Yeah.
mind. But uh, though, okay, so more band talk because there is something that's more immediate that will be happening. While they are announcing all of this stuff, they're all also announcing that there will be a banned and restricted announcement happening soon, May 29th, which is a Monday. Um, and that will be just for standard. So there's a standard BNR announcement May 29th, which is fantastic because that means that the like the format will change before the summer. What seemed like when we got the announcement about like the 3 year thing, it seemed like we're gonna have a summer of this stagnant, like same standard format because nothing's gonna change in standard until September. And then when we get to September, those cards don't even rotate out. So it just seemed like, oh my God, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Now I am feeling so great because they're specifically doing this BNR announcement. It's like 2 weeks away. And it's like basically rotation. Like it, they're gonna get rid of all the cards that people have been complaining about just to spice things up. I'm sure. Like it's all
They have to,
speculation,
right?
but like they have to. You're right. Yeah.
There are two things that would completely blow my mind. First would be if Fable of the Mirror Breaker's not on that list. I would be like, I would bet anything. Like it just can't happen
Mm-hmm.
that Fable's not on that list. And second, if that list is short, I will also be very surprised. So my interpretation is exactly what you said. This is rotation, except we don't want to rotate all the cards that never got their time in the sun
Mm-hmm.
and it look really cool. And you're like, oh, it's a bummer this card was in the set with this other one because it never got to see any play. If they do it that way, this is like improved rotation. It's rotation, but we're not going to get rid of the stuff that has cool synergies with the new cards that we like designed ahead, but just never got to play because Fable's just so good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like that's a good thing, but they have to like really be swinging this band hammer around, like Thor just twirls his
Mm-hmm.
hammer around. That's what they got to do. Like anything that has basically ever seen any reasonable amount of standard play should go.
Mm-hmm.
Like essentially, it is rotation.
Yeah.
If you basically played against this card before in standard, it's
It
gone.
should go.
Like ban it.
Yeah. And specifically this, and you, we're only thinking about, I mean, like, it's mainly cards that were going to be rotated out anyway, in my
Right?
mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are first. So you're thinking like Fable, you're thinking Evoke Despair, maybe like the Wandering Emperor, things like that, where we're like,
Yeah, I'm
hey,
talking like Blood Tithe Harvester.
yeah,
Get it out of here. It's
we
an
don't need it.
uncommon. It's not that good, but it's enough of it. Like it
Yeah,
won't be busted without Fable. I get that, but like,
yeah.
why? We don't need it. It's gone. Get rid
It's
of it.
just all those things.
Yeah.
And obviously they're like trying to balance all their, it was interesting to hear them talk about the bannings between like how counter spells aren't really good right now, and then like removal is really strong, so that means you can't play Baneslayer Angel type cards, which are cards that need to untap to be good. So all your cards have to be good when you play them, things like that. And they're
Yeah.
trying to twist the knobs to change that in the future. But of course, it's going to take some time. We probably won't see that for
Right.
2 years. Um,
Right. And counters not being good is exactly like you said. It just drives it so that your creatures have to do something. Like it also
mhm.
forces you to play the ET creatures because they're not going to get countered, which is their weakness, and is they're going to get removed instead. Like that's what's
Yeah.
going to happen. So
Yeah.
um, yeah. So and that's a good clarification. I am talking explicitly about the sets that should have rotated. That's where you have to be extra like
Focused.
lenient.
Hmm.
That's where I mean you can ban random uncommons that are just whatever, but people have seen them, people have played
Yeah.
enough. Like I'm talking, uh, farewell.
Hmm.
See you later. Bye
Get
bye.
out of here.
That
Farewell. Farewell.
exactly farewell to you, and that like cascades right because
Hmm.
farewell was put there to counter certain cards. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they would take this approach to see Oni Call to Anvil go,
Hmm.
even though I love that card. And that card is, I don't think, ever actually been in a tier one standard deck.
I don't think so
It's
either.
just been around. It's been like tier two since it's come along. And if you get rid of farewell and you get rid of like the good cards, then the natural thing to do is a bunch of people are going to play that. And like people don't care about that. They don't want to play
Yeah.
against that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't see it unless I'm playing it from your decks, but that's also me. So it doesn't.
Most for a while, whenever a new set came out, Anvil at the very start
You're
of that
right.
set
You're right.
coming out, Anvil would see like 2 weeks of play,
You're
and
right.
then
You're right.
people would realize it's just better to play like Grixis control or Grixis mid range and
Mhm.
throw away the Anvils.
That's
And
true.
then then after those 2 weeks, then I'd be the only one playing it. But like I think that's basically how aggressive they should be.
Yeah.
Like nobody plays Ob Nixilis, but nobody's gonna sad to see him go, and nobody's gonna want to play against him if he becomes good after the format, like the adversary,
Hmm.
not the new one, obviously. Um, so just get rid of it. Like anything where you're on the fence, you're like, oh, I don't know, this hasn't been that good. Just get rid of it. Like think
Yeah.
about would people prefer to have this in the format? The answer is no. Then just
Yeah. Just
you should they should wield the ban hammer like the MTG Twitter community.
that's a great that's a great idea. Just like anytime anyone would be like, you know what, ban. I mean, okay, to be fair, people do say ban Basic Island, but like,
Ban
but ban it. Though that is, what if they just banned all the Grixis lands? And then like,
and that's a good point too. I think they should ban the lands.
yeah, or something like some of the
Like all the
cycles.
lands that would have rotated, just ban them.
Yeah, or at least like all the tri lands or
Triumphs.
something.
Yeah, the triumphs certainly can
Just
go.
like just go. Obviously, it makes some cards worse, and it makes some decks that have been like popping up worse. But one thing we didn't talk about last week is that, like, hey, with a 3 year standard, your mana bases are just going to be better. Like standard specifically is the format of shitty mana bases almost always. Like there are like was Return
Once
to
upon
Rav.
a time, that was true.
Yeah. Um, and I was just thinking, like, did they ever have the fetches and the shocks in the same standard? Return to Ravnica went out of standard when cons came in, right? So anyway,
Yeah, you didn't
you
fetch
can
shock in
shocks,
standard.
yeah,
Um,
which they do on purpose, obviously, but like we've just been very lucky with a lot of the lands we've had recently, and it's it will usually they use it to dictate what colors you should play, and it will be interesting to see how they do that in the future now that there will just be a extra thirds of sets that are just like hanging around with lands. We're going to get into a bit more about these cards we think we should be banned, decks we want to see in the new format, all that kind of stuff. But before we do that, the one last other piece of Magic news is that the reason that the ban announcement is May 29th and not today or yesterday is because Arena Championship 3 is happening May 27th and 28th. So they are banning as soon as they possibly can, because they did not want to obviously throw off any of the competitors on their training for the standard and draft tournament. So of course they're just going to wait until right after, um, which is really interesting because it really shows that they think that something needed to change in standard immediately, because a
Mhm.
lot of the time they have tried to, oh well, we're going to have this whole big tournament, people are going to watch it, they're going to want to play the decks, like let's give them some time to do that. No, not this time. It's like, hey, that's an old deck. The day after the tournament, that's an old deck and it's over. Like the
Yeah.
format's changed.
Yeah. Now I saw some, people saying, why would they do this? This tournament's gonna be so boring now. And like, yeah, that's true. They're sacrificing
Hmm.
probably some viewership. Um, but on the flip side, like you said, they're not disrupting people who are playing for real money and
Hmm.
often like sort of do it as their livelihood. But also, maybe they could have announced this at the exact same time that they announced the standard rotation, or even like pushed it a
Hmm.
week earlier, and then they could have put uh, they could have put the date a little sooner, and then given them some time. But I actively don't think we want that. Like, do we want the format solved right away? Do we want the new format to just be take off from where the pros left us, and we'll have like
For
no
the whole
time
summer.
for exploration for ourselves, kind of thing? Like,
No.
no, that's like I don't think Pro Tours can be super fun for new formats, but it's just awkward because in order for it not to, you have to give them enough time. But if you give them enough time, then they solve the format, and it's like, okay, cool, format solved day one.
Hmm.
You know, so I think this is like ultimately just a good thing. Um,
Yeah,
Sorry
that's
to the
great.
people who would have watched this. Like, if you were going to watch this before you knew this new information, you could still watch it. It's going to be just as entertaining. Just if you're expecting to like copy deck lists and go dominate the ladder with it, like I don't think you were going to see anything super new here, anyways. So,
Exactly. It's not
um,
that new. And the other thing to mention about like MTG Twitter or like Reddit or anywhere you're listening to people talk about Magic, here even, but like I think we're more with it than some people. Um, Even in this announcement video, they're talking about, hey, last time we changed standard, we made it 18-month standard instead of 24, and this is what the players told us they wanted. We had done surveys, we'd done research, our data had come, and they said, we want a shorter standard. We want rotation to happen faster. This will be better for the format. It's more interesting. This is almost exactly what we were saying last week. In a different way, we were interested in a faster rotating format. But like the reality was that players said that that's what they wanted. And then after they changed it, people stopped playing standard. Like they had more feedback saying that it was too hard to keep up and that the numbers actually went down. And that's just a good, I think that Wizards learned a lot from that experiment, saying, hey, what people say and scream really loudly isn't always what they actually want. They can tell
right,
you that
they
that's,
they learned the classic surveying
yeah,
principle that everyone has to learn. That what people tell you they want is not what they want,
yeah.
really.
A lot of times people don't know what they want. They think they know, and then when they get it, they realize it's not what they want. So,
Right, like they're not experts in game design or in this kind of thing. Like they just know they don't like a certain thing right now.
mhm,
Um, and identifying problems is not the same as coming up with solutions. So when you're asking
yes,
them to come up with solutions by basically saying, hey, would you be like a shorter standard
mhm,
rotation? Or what do you want? You want a shorter standard?
mhm,
You're going to get the wrong answer.
yeah,
Whereas I think this time they probably did a better survey job. They probably asked just different questions. What are some like targeted pain points where the person could just say, "Oh yeah, I hate that," or "No," and then they came up with this solution themselves.
yeah. And I also think they're specifically targeting like tabletop play in stores where like they want just like people to be able to go and play standard with their same deck for months.
Now,
So,
to be fair, if I remember correctly, when they shortened that rotation, was like a particularly kind of garbage standard. time
Yeah.
as
So
well.
that
So the like lowered play
mhm.
could also just be if the sets were not
Yeah.
fun.
Well, it's like, hey, here's a smaller standard, so all you can play is like Amonkhet and like Kaladesh.
Right. And like the Amonkhet is pointless because the Kaladesh
It's
is
so
way more
strong.
powerful.
Yeah. So it's just like everyone's playing block set constructed anyway until, Ramen Up Red. But
Right.
anyway, that is probably for a longer thing. But that was fantastic Magic news. Love to see it. We do want to talk a bit about the standard. Oh, sorry. Before we keep going, because we're having this ban and restricted announcements for standard on May 29th, that means that there will not be standard cards the 3 weeks before the spoilers for the fall set, which is the normal ban time. They
Yeah.
explicitly said that.
They're moving it forward.
So we are getting that ban announcement
Yeah.
earlier. So we won't have like May 29th, there's a ban announcement, and then August, whatever, there's another standard ban. It's just happening right now. Whew.
Rotation came early, folks.
And we're excited about it for the most part.
Oh yeah, this announcement was very positive.
Yes. I think people were really excited about it. It was great to hear them speak on it. And also, it was cool just hearing Huey talk about like, organized play and specifically how they've been keeping standard as like a format out of a lot of important qualifying tournaments until next
Mhm.
January, so that you don't have to deal with some of this stuff that's happening because they know it's
Right.
going to be funky. And that they're focusing on making sure that like qualifying, just like they will only play one format going into a tournament like season. And so when you're going, I think it's every 6 months or so, or I guess maybe 3 months, I'm not exactly sure, but it'll be like this chunk is standard, so you can just focus on standard for this time in your life, and then we're going to flip over to pioneer and then flip over to modern and keep going back and forth. um, Sounds really cool. How nice compared to whatever they just roll a dice before that and be like, oh, I guess we're playing this format now. um, anyway, I'm just happy with the way things are going. Makes sense to me.
I feel like it used to be the store got to choose.
Right.
So if the store was running the event, they could be like, oh, our players like modern, we're going to play modern,
Mm-hmm.
which made some amount of sense because it's like, hey, store, you're the one who knows what's going to get you the best turnout.
Mm-hmm.
And so this, like, we'll let you make the decision. But I think ultimately this is better
it
for
it's better
everyone.
because they're in that, when you're thinking about that way, it's just focusing on getting people to go to the store and play.
Mhm.
But then when you qualify for a standard tournament playing modern, it's like, or vice versa, you're playing standard and then you're like, oh, I qualified for a modern tournament. I can't
Right.
fucking play modern. It's so expensive. Like there's no way, like if I qualified for a modern tournament, I'm not going. Like I can't play. I can't
Yeah.
do it.
You'd have to borrow the cards or something.
Yeah, for a format I've never played because
Yeah.
I can't play
I
it.
can't practice it.
So
Yeah.
I don't even know what deck I want to play because I just, so that ends up being like crazy to me, that like, oh yeah, I don't know why I'm here. I'd go to the tournament and be like, I don't belong here. As opposed to being like, oh, I'm going to a pioneer tournament that qualifies me for another pioneer tournament that qualifies me for another pioneer tournament. So that makes more sense. Um, uh, if you're actually interested in doing those things. All right, Jeff, how about I shut up for a little bit and then we can talk about standard, where we are right now and where we want it to go. Kind of talking about the different decks we've been seeing now, the different decks we've been seeing now that the new set came out.
Right. Yeah. So where are we at? Where's the snapshot? So we have the Pro Tour, the sort of overwhelming uh, message from the pros is that Rakdos is the bee's knees.
Mhm.
Rakdos-based mid-range decks completely took over, both in terms of success rate, but also just in terms of raw numbers. Um, the pros were maybe undecided on which exact setup is best. There was a lot of just straight Rakdos mid-range. There was some Grixis, like kind of, I think of it as old school, but it's Grixis mid-range. And then there were various reanimator strategies that were all centered in red-black. They're all basically the same, trying to reanimate Traxa or Atali. But basically, sort of that was the core shell of a lot of these decks was the same. That's your Fable of the Mirror Breaker, your Blood Tide Harvester. A lot of the time, you have your even if you're playing three colors, Invoke Despair. It's a fine way to top out your curve. Shieldred, like you guys know the cards. You know them. You've seen them. You played against them. You've groaned when they hit the battlefield. The pros didn't find anything better than that, basically, and that won the tournament. And I think the outcome was that just play Rakdos, just straight Rakdos is the best. Now there's some obviously interconnections, like the reanimator strategies might be a little better against stuff that goes big. Grixis maybe has an edge in the mirror. I don't even know if that's true, but just the counter spells could be huge there. Anyways, the core, basically this whole format revolves around red-black, and that's still true today.
Yep. As it has been in other formats such as Pioneer, and these red-black has been a menace for a while now. We watched it go from Jeff's just little baby into the menace it is today.
I feel somewhat responsible because when I started realizing, like when I started becoming a Rakdos first player as my favorite deck, it felt like it just out of nowhere then became the tier 1 deck in every fucking format everywhere. And I was like, well, this isn't what I wanted. I wanted to play like a competitive deck that wasn't just the best.
Yeah.
Like sometimes floats in and out of tier 1, I'd be happy with that. But just like always the only mid-range deck you can
just
play.
S tier, yeah. Not what we were looking for. So anyway, like we said before, this is the deck we're expecting the most bans from. Seeing Rakener Bankbuster go away, that'd be nice. Not even because it's like a busted amazing card. If you know this podcast, you just know that we don't love that card. Or specifically Jeff.
I mean, I do love it, actually. I love when my opponent plays it on turn 2 because my chance of winning goes up to like 70%.
So I would like to see that card go, just because it's
get rid of it. It's seen enough play.
Yeah, it has seen enough play. It's just, and in my case, it just happens to always be the annoying colorless blocker that Skrelv can't get somebody around when I'm playing decks, because it's just, oh, look at that, I could attack you for lethal, except for you have a stupid Reckoner Bankbuster just for cards because it's stupid. Fuck this card. I'm just tired of it.
Well, for me, it just doesn't do anything against my strategies. So I'm like, oh, I'm glad you main decked 4 of those things, because it literally ups my percent chance of them. You didn't play Blood Tithe Harvester on turn 2? Oh man, my odds just skyrocketed.
That's true. That is true. It's always nice to see that instead. But yeah, just anything else, I think, and that's what we were really saying about this like ban announcement, is that like I'm anticipating cards being banned that aren't normally seen as ban worthy, but are just, it's literally just rotation.
For sure. The other deck that's still here, still good. It used to be, I think there was a short period of time where this was the best deck in the format, like kind of the end of the last cycle before Mom came out.
Yes.
And that's Esper Legends. It's exactly what it sounds like. It is blue, black, and white creatures that are legendary. There's just a lot of really powerful ones that interact with your opponent. So it becomes basically one of these things we talk about happens sometimes on the show. We talk about the like aggro decks that have good card quality. And these decks are always good. And this is one of those decks. For some reason, 3-color aggro deck, it doesn't seem to care. It seems to operate just fine. And it can go a little longer too. So, calling it aggro, but maybe I'm calling it aggro because it kills you on turn 3 or 4 so freaking often. But like, it can go long too. Its card quality is good enough. So yeah, this deck also, probably going to be hit with some notable bans, but I would expect to see this in some numbers at the Arena Championship.
Championship. Yeah, most notably, like I had said, that Rona is going to be a huge part of this deck. Super helpful. Lets you just like sift through your deck really quickly. That card will probably stick around. I wonder if they're going to get rid of one of the reasons this deck emerged was because Plaza of Heroes is such a good land for it. So the sneaky weird things about this deck is that Plaza of Heroes helps you play everything on time, which is a big reason why you wouldn't see a 3-color aggro deck. And almost all your spells are legendary creatures, so you can play them, as well as you can play more of the channel lands than you normally would because all of them are like spells. So I think like you usually don't see like 3 copies of channel lands. It tends to be like 1 or 2. And this one regularly plays like 3 copies of Otawara, 3 copies of Aganjo, like things like that, just because they routinely cost 1 mana, like a single colored mana to play them. Just because every single creature you have is a legend.
And that also lets them be a 25 land aggro deck, which just helps really balance out the variance in playing aggro. Like often you have to be kind of 21, 22 lands because if you flood out, you just lose.
You just lose, yeah.
But in this deck, you could flood out, and a lot of those are spells. So
yeah,
you feel comfortable playing 25, and then you don't just lose to not drawing lands either.
Yeah. Plus, you have a bunch of creatures that either loot or, well, draw extra cards or whatever you need, or you're looting cards and you're getting them back. Things like that. This is one of the decks that I think is really interesting, and I like how it kind of came together because it has a bunch of pieces from different sets that feel like they actually have more synergy, where it's like, oh, look at all these cards that draw cards and discard cards and do them in different ways that are from different sets. And oh, this set cared about legends, and then this has legends from this thing. I think all that's really interesting. And I think that the Esper Legends deck is more of the standard deck that they want to be part of standard in the future of standard. Not necessarily, not saying that it won't get any bans in this next announcement, but when they're talking about decks that they want to be good, they want decks that like have more synergy as opposed to as mid-rangey. So like this deck specifically wants a type of creature and cards that care about that and do other things like that, stretched over many sets, which is their focus, I think.
Yeah, I'm definitely okay with this deck. I think it's kind of cool as well, but it was the best deck. For that brief window, I didn't really mind that. I will say, like, legendary as a theme feels somewhat like a scam in terms of not being mid-rangey, because legendary just generally means like powerful.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I play Esper powerful cards. Like the Rakdos player could be like, well, I play Rakdos powerful cards. What's the difference? And it's like, no, one's my theme. Yours isn't the theme.
It's true. It's more so like, no. I can only play one of each creature named a certain thing. So it's actually hard.
I have a disadvantage. Yeah.
So like, I don't feel bad that you killed that creature because I have another one in my hand that I couldn't play anyway.
Drew me a card.
Yeah.
And I think the other deck worth mentioning that's kind of still around from the Pro Tour is just blue-white soldiers or tempo or whatever you want to call it, soldiers. This made the top 8 of the Pro Tour, so that gave it some little extra oomph. You're seeing it a little more often. And it's a good deck. It's, in my opinion, like, I don't see a ton of a reason to play this. Like, if you want to play a aggro deck, you should probably play Esper. But some people like it. I'm not sure what edge they feel it gives them. So I would say this is kind of below the other decks we've talked about. But it's there, and some people just really like it.
Yeah, I like this deck now. I've come full circle, I think. I was playing this week, specifically this list. I think what I really need the juice of is like, I wanted something else to give me a little bit of oomph against like spells decks and like dealing with planeswalkers and invoke despairs and stuff. And
Mhm.
honestly, Invasion of Gobakon has been like a card that I really have liked. Like, because it's like,
Legitimately don't even know what that card does.
okay, so invade. Let me explain it to you. I think we talked about it at some point. This is Gobakon is we talked about this briefly, but it is Teo's
Right. Yeah.
plane, and so it's 1 and a white for a 3 defense battle. 3 is really important. And when it enters the battlefield, you get to look at your opponent's hand, and then you choose a non-land. I'm looking at it sideways.
Yeah.
You may exile a non-land card from it, and as long as that card remains exiled, its owner can cast it. If it's a spell, it costs 2 more to cast. So you Paolo them, and then it flips into, once you like attack it down or whatever, it flips into this enchantment that says at the beginning of your end step, every creature that attacked this turn gets a +1/+1 counter on it. And then you can also sacrifice it and give all your creatures hexproof and indestructible for the turn, which ends up being pretty relevant against a lot of the black decks, just because, I mean, obviously invoke despair is the issue, but be able to give your whole team like protection is great. And especially because this card, usually the play pattern kind of comes down to like turn 1 you can play your Savannah Lion, the 2/1, and then turn 2 you hold up mana so you can either counter their thing or play a flash soldier because you have a couple different ones in your deck. And by that point you have it's either resolute reinforcements or the Zephyr Sentinel. So then you'll have enough on turn 3 you can play the Gobakon, take whatever. Sometimes it happens to be like Shieldred or something out of their hand so that they can't continue to block, and then start making your creatures bigger and bigger. And you can kind of snowball in that sense while holding protection up. So either, and the protection is the enchantment, the whatever the Gobakon flips into, light, shield, array. Sure. So I have liked that sequence of events. Now it also has the issue of a lot of the cards care about having a ton of soldiers, and that doesn't always happen because, well, it's Magic. Like, I don't know, if you need 5 soldiers to win the game, that just it just is just doesn't really happen. Um, but it's been a
Yeah.
fun deck. I like it, and having some flash threats with counter spells always reminds me of rogues, which makes me happy. This is no rogues, but I do. It makes me feel like it every once in a while.
Yeah. It's another aggro deck with some powerhouse cards in it, though. I would say it's just like not every card is individually powerful, like the Esper Legends deck.
Mhm.
There's a few that really do need the help, but then there are some, uh, star-studded cards in here. Like, guess what? Like, if you want to play whatever, what's the card that puts +1/+1 counters? Like that card's just good, right?
The wait, are you talking about Gobakon, or are you talking
No, no,
about
no. The one that like puts the counters every turn.
that's the backside of Invasion of Gobakon?
No, no.
I
I'm
don't
not
know.
seeing it in the deck list. Do you not play this card anymore? It's like the oh jeez, what was
Oh yeah, no. It's yeah. The it's not playing that because the
it?
3 mana slot is so rough that like I don't want
I think
anything to
that
cost
card's
3.
Siege Veteran is what I was
Siege
thinking
Veteran,
of.
that's what it is.
But that card's great. I'm surprised it's not even in the deck anymore. But like there you go then. There's 3 drops that are just good enough that and Skrelv, it's not even a soldier, it's just a good card.
Hmm.
If you wanted to play Thalia, like bring it in. That's a
Yeah,
soldier, but also just a good card. Like
yeah. Fairy Mastermind has also been one because like playing in a spot where like the 3 drops are hard because really want to have um like a flash 2 drop and a counter spell. So the turn 3 is always so awkward because you usually just get kind of hosed. Um,
right.
but so as many flash threats as possible to hold up counter spells because those are the things that always kill you, especially with fucking the 5 mana sweeper now, the white one. I just keep running into for whatever reason. Just I don't know what's going
Yeah.
on, but anyway.
So that's a good segue into the next thing, which I think is like, how is this tournament going to be different from the Pro Tour?
Yeah.
I think those four decks will show up, probably pretty much in the order we talked about of like how many people are playing them. Probably the biggest percentage will be red black based mid range decks. And there'll be some Esper and then player or two kind of on soldiers, that kind of thing. What's going to be different? The biggest change that I foresee is I think these reanimator decks will not show up in the numbers they showed up in the Pro Tour. I think we kind of got the results back on that one, and like you're better off just not putting cards you can't cast into your mid-range deck, because the payoff of sometimes you might get to reanimate them isn't that high. Like it isn't worth it. And I'm sorry, but I literally played against a deck not too long ago that resolved a tally like 6 times and I still beat them. It just isn't that good. Like sometimes it hits nonsense, especially when every card in my deck sucks. Then one of the cards they cast, I'm not worried about, right? Like I don't care if you cast Anvil. I don't care if you cast like Voldaren Epicure. Go right ahead. So you better hit an Atraxa, or you're hitting nonsense, and you're like the odds of you hitting Atraxa are low. So I've just been laughing at a tally pretty much, because it's like you go ahead and reanimate that. That's your whole game plan. Like eventually, like maybe you'll cast enough tallies that you hit both of my combo pieces and kill me. If you do that, I would love that. That'd be amazing. So I go right ahead. But more likely, I'm going to draw my combo pieces and beat you. Because you just keep casting this dinosaur and like reanimating it and killing your old one. Like, yeah,
Well,
because it's their only blocker. Like they're gonna die, so we can't attack with it. So it's always just funny because it's like your whole game plan is to reanimate a tally and Atraxa, and you cast a tally like 5 times and Atraxa twice, and I still won. That means your game plan needs a little extra juice, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting because I haven't been running into Reanimator nearly as much as like the 5-color ramp deck.
So that's what I wanted to talk about, is replacing the Reanimators.
That's what I thought, but I didn't want to, I didn't want to completely jump on your toes. But yes, that's the new hotness.
Yeah, this is the deck that my deck never beats, as opposed to the Reanimator deck, where I think my matchup's really strong. Here it's like I can't beat this. I'm playing like a red black ping you one hell, but like the only way I beat this is if I combo. And so that's one of the reasons to put the combo in the deck, is this deck's just going to journal and do nothing, and I have to kill them. Yeah. And so the only way that I have any chance of doing that is to draw
the combo,
a win the game now combo. But otherwise, this deck, I can't beat it. Yeah, I've been seeing this on the rise and on the rise, and I think it makes sense. Like, looking at this, it must be good against red black mid range. It has to. Like, if this deck isn't good against red black mid range, throw it in the bin, because that's basically what it's designed to do. And so I think this will be the other main piece of the puzzle in the weekend's events. It's going to be how many people are level 1 on Rakdos, and how many people are level 2 on this deck that should beat Rakdos, and how many people, and it's not a secret, so the Rakdos players will have
tech
adapted to have answers for this. And so it'll be that general game of like, I think we can kind of shore up our matchup here. Are we able to shore it up enough that I should just play the best deck? Or is the matchup so bad that I should play that deck, and then my other matchups are still okay, but not as good as they would be if I played Rakdos? And that's kind of the interesting thing of these smaller events, becomes different than playing on Arena. But yeah, because it's an important part of the metagame for that tournament.
Absolutely. It also, just like looking at it, like obviously you're playing 5-color, but like you're not playing any of the cards that we're really used to seeing besides Bankbuster. The other ones are like Ossification, sure, but then like you get to play
like 2 colors.
Yeah, it really is 2 colors. You're playing green white essentially, but you know, have all the different tri lands to help you get to have your domain up. The one card that I thought was really fun in the deck, and the card that I never wanted to see, because I had put your list through your most recent deck list.
Yeah.
Check it out on our Discord if you haven't seen it. It's pretty fun. But running into this deck was the fucking worst.
Yeah, you
Because
can't beat it.
turn 5, they Archangel of Wrath you kicked, and then they kill whatever creature you have or a planeswalker, and then they gain 2 life, and then they're just gaining life, and you can't do anything. And like they have 3 different random cards that like. So Archangel of Wrath gains them life. Atraxa obviously can gain life because it has lifelink. And then Herd Migration, when they're just like going and getting lands, they're getting life. And it would just, when you're playing like the just
Hang
get
you
you
one at a time.
yeah, it just doesn't work out. So that was super rough. I think I scraped out a match win because they I got the combo and then they flooded. Oh no, sorry, they didn't flood because they can't lose if they flood. They they were screwed.
We're screwed. Yeah.
So
that is literally how you beat them. You hope that
Yeah.
one of the games the combo saves you, and the other game they just don't get to play much Magic, or you miraculously combo twice. But usually it only works once.
Yeah. So this deck has definitely been there and been like, son of a bitch. Like, it's a
good deck.
It is a good deck. Yeah.
I was kind of laughing at it the first couple of times. I'm like, what is this nonsense my opponent's playing? And then I thought about the metagame a little bit. I'm like, no, actually, this would work. Like, the decks aren't really fast enough to punish this, except Soldiers probably beats this pretty good. But
no, I still think that you can gain enough life that you can. I don't think Soldiers is fast enough.
I guess with Sunfall and like if you ever resolve Herd Migration.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess Archangel of Wrath is just that good.
It's really, it's honestly Archangel of Wrath, because like that's the thing that shores up. You can even just play it on 4 to block and gain life constantly. Yeah. And then when they Atali and they end up hitting their Herd Migration, that just happens all the time. Or take your Brutal Cathars or whatever, and you're like, oh cool, nice.
Yeah, this deck's a classic. Like I bring in Duress, I Duress them. I see 2 Archangel of Wraths in their hand. I'm like, okay, I'll just concede.
Yeah, it's like, oh, so you have,
I'm not gonna beat that.
Yeah, your creature is removal. Okay, cool. So the reason I'm just happy about this deck, and like I'm just happy in general, is because Archangel of Wrath, when that came out, like I had that in my pre-release, and I was like, oh, this card's awesome. It's gonna be sweet and standard. And then it was fucking nowhere. Like, you couldn't play it at all. And I was like, man, it even has like a black and a red pip on it, and you can't play it. Like, what's going on? It's so strange. So I'm like, it has been beating me, and it's been really frustrating, and I hate seeing that card. But I'm really happy that that card is actually doing things, because it looked like a card that I would want to be good in standard. Like it just seemed. Just
part of that, I think, is like the lack of support for Mardu.
That's true.
It's just like Mardu mid range was a thing, but it's either Grixis or Jund because it's the lands.
Because we go back to the lands, because I want to build an Abzan deck and I can't fucking get any good lands for it.
I feel you, man. I have like a Sultai mid-range deck sitting in Arena right now that I think is awesome, and I just look at the lands and it makes me cry a little bit.
Yeah. I've like this Abzan Legends list that I've been trying to get together, and it's just not working, because I'm just like, don't want to play Esper just because I want to play Abzan anyway. But cool deck. I do anticipate seeing this as well. Yeah. I'm happy whenever we get to see, like, this is, besides Gobakon, I mean, like, Invasion of Zendikar is like fine. It doesn't really excite me that much as far as battles go, but exciting to see that there are at least some battles that will probably show up at the tournament.
For sure. So I think that's pretty much the metagame, right? Red, black, Esper, blue, white, and then this 5-color deck that is built to kind of trash all those other decks. Those other decks know about it. They're going to have to try to come up with their game plan for that matchup. And so that's going to be the interesting part, I think. It's easy to say, oh, we know all these decks, it's going to be boring, but like I think if you were just to naively play Nathan Stoyer's list, like I bet Nathan Stoyer won't play the same list that he played at the Pro Tour
No.
because he's gonna need he knows this new deck is here. He's gonna need to have some tech for it, or maybe he's even on that list if he thinks that
Mhm.
it's just better to play that. I'm gonna trust whatever deck Nathan picks is probably the correct choice.
I
But
was gonna say I would be really surprised that he would play that, honestly, but it would seem like he would play his bread and butter, but who knows?
yeah, he can win with anything, so he's gonna pick whatever is like the best, probably.
That's, I mean, that's true, but like he has won with like, red black based mid range decks so far.
I know where it was a paltry Pro Tour top eight with the ramp deck, so he
Hmm.
should
But
stick to his strengths.
yeah.
One thing I did want to call out though, as a potential dark horse, okay,
Hmm.
is green white enchantments. So I don't know if you've played against this deck recently. Yeah,
Mm-mm.
I knew you would like this. I don't know if you've played against this deck on the ladder recently. Um, it seems to be gaining some amount of traction, and that's driven by Calyx, guided by fate. I don't know if you've played
Oh,
against this card. This
no.
card is amazing in this deck. I've played against it and I blew past it in the spoilers. It is outrageous in this deck. So for those who don't know what it does, it's a 2/2. It has Constellation. So whenever it or another enchantment ETBs put a +1/+1 counter on something,
Hmm.
and then whenever Calyx or an enchanted creature deals combat damage to a player, you create a token that's a copy of an enchantment, a non-legendary enchantment you control. And you only do it once, so you don't attack and then get like
A bunch.
10
Hmm.
copies. But like, this is ridiculous. I had opponents copying like the haunted thingy majiggy,
Oh yeah.
and that's really dumb. Just to let you know, if that thing gets copied, you're gonna lose. And this is like it's its own visitor. It's like the visitor
generous
plus
visitor, yeah.
yeah, it's like a combo of the generous visitor and the kami that kind of
Hmm.
made this deck what it is, but it's the 3-drop version, and then the copying just like goes over the top. This deck really is really explosive. It's really a lot better because of this card. And I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see if anyone brings this to the event because it seemed
That,
real to me when I was getting my
yeah.
ass kicked by it.
I I love hearing this because I want to go back. I'm pretty sure we have a soundbite of you saying specifically like, "Who gives a shit about Calyx?" last week. I'm very, very sure. I'm pretty, I'm pretty positive.
I meant the character, to be
Okay,
fair,
all
but I
right.
also did not read this card.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's so interesting. That's such a Zach thing to do. Is like not read the card.
Yeah,
I
just because
did.
you. Well, I saw it was a green white enchantment beacon card. I was like, I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, I looked at it and thought, oh, sick. That seems cool. And then I was like, but it costs three, and I want them to be one and two. I love one and two
Not with
drops.
Jukai Naturalist. It doesn't.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, wasn't remembering that he is a enchantment himself.
Yeah,
Um,
so that's you get the freebie constellation the first time. So
mhm.
and then you basically what happens is like you drop it and you attack and you copy something immediately,
That's
which is pretty
true.
cool.
That's nice.
I
That,
should mention that like you may create a token that's a copy of target non-legendary enchantment you control. Like you don't sack that at end of turn.
you just
It
have it.
just creates the copy. A lot of people I think autopilot to oh it's like copies it and then it goes away. No,
Mhm.
you just
Yeah.
get it. So if you have a Jukai Naturalist, you play this, you attack with a Jukai Naturalist, you get a second Jukai Naturalist. Could probably play another thing.
That seems
It's
pretty
it's
good.
this card
I,
is pretty dumb.
it's hard because in my mind, all I'm thinking is that like I want to play the runes again and then just draw a bunch of
Yeah.
cards. But like that's not how the deck's gonna work. But
No, you'll have to be content with just like I mean, I think they still play the instant that whenever you play an enchantment, you draw a card.
Oh, Rite of Harmony.
Yeah, I think you could still do those shenanigans. And if you're
That's
copying
true.
naturalists, then all your shit's 1 mana.
That's true. You can copy your ossifications and stuff. Okay. And wedding announcement and restoration of Iganjo. All right. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of outrageous stuff to copy.
That sounds fucking awesome. Okay. Well, I guess I know the next deck I'm gonna be playing like very soon.
Yeah, I'm hoping at least one person brings it and does reasonably well with it because I had to smile when I was getting my ass kicked by
Yeah.
this. And it happened a few times, and then I was like,
Hmm.
maybe this is just real. Like maybe this Calyx thing is just good enough to put
Yeah.
what was kind of a mediocre deck just like
Over the
supercharged.
top. I love it. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. I'm upset that you're telling me about an enchantment deck that like I should be playing. I sometimes I
It's
put
gonna be
that
Benton Madsen at the championship or
yeah, and
something.
he's gonna win on his phone. Jeez. Anyway, Jeff, do you want to go on a beer break? I'm all
Yeah.
out. So let's go on a beer break, grab some more beer, and then talk about something after the break. Who knows?
Good.
This beer break is brought to you by our patrons over on Patreon.
That's right. You're already supporting the show just by being a listener, but if you want to support the show even more, well, Patreon is the best way to do that. Plus, you get to vote on your favorite co-host by, well, buying me a beer.
Or buying me a beer. So go to patreon.com/arena regulars to vote on your favorite host.
Or if you'd rather send us awesome deck lists than, IRL beers, you could do that at our Discord channel. The link should be in the show notes.
That's right, Jeff. But I do have a beer right in front of us right now. To continue our Little Beasts tap takeover, we have a little guy, and he looks like this. Oh, look at him. He's so cute. He is a little ladybug. I'm assuming, I don't know why I think he's a he, because maybe he's missing a tooth in the front. So, like, I don't know why that gives me like
Or it's like
masculine vibes.
the one strap overall kind of thing.
Yeah. It's like has that energy. Or it's probably because I just think of ladybugs as men now because of A Bug's Life when I was a kid came out, and he was a ladybug that was a man. Anyway, this is Ladybug. It is a beer from Little Beasts, and it is a smoked grisette with cherries, and it's 4.5%. So very interesting. It's been a long time since we've had something smoked, so I'm very excited for this. This cute little guy. But anyway, Jeff, you ready to crack it open?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, let's check it out. Oh, gotta bring those purple beers. All the purple
Always,
beers.
man. Always.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. So we have oh oh
Take that.
okay. All right. Wake up for this boy. Sorry, I was gonna start talking about magic, but then I got sucked back into the beer.
Yeah.
Oh, buddy.
I don't know
Anyway,
if I'm excited or afraid. I
this is
poured mine a little
the
too aggressively, so
yeah, a little hi. This is definitely the most interesting purple beer we've had, I think. Like
oh boy.
at least that first chunk. Okay. Um anyway, Jeff, let's get back into talking about some standard. Now, we discussed mainly the decks that we were thinking were going to be in Arena Championship 3, which is of course the most important tournament right before the ban comes around. But what are some decks or strategies or cards or colors we're hoping will like bring themselves to the light after this ban that we're expecting to really shake up the format?
Good call. That's a good call out, right? Like we've talked about how basically they should be really lenient, just ban anything that people wouldn't want to see. Basically, they wouldn't be happy to see it, like they would be upset it doesn't go, just get rid of it, right?
Hmm.
If it was in a set that would rotate anyways. So I guess what shouldn't they ban, or what won't they ban, or what are we excited for after the rotation ban, or the rotation ban, as I guess I'm calling it now. The first thing that jumps out to me, and this is kind of like a broad statement, that can be like, it won't be true 100%, but it's something I think for the most part they should do. I think they should leave the tribes. So let's say Midnight Hunt were rotating, then all werewolves would be gone, right? Normally.
Hmm.
Instead, they can leave pretty much that whole tribe. The only one that I can see personally is the Trespasser, Graveyard Trespasser.
Hmm.
I'd be happy enough to see that go. Um, but otherwise, and I could see some arguments for like some of the ones that we've seen in past standards and maybe had enough of the hasty one, for example.
Yeah, the storm guy.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, that's interesting. I was thinking about him, and as long like I think he's going to be perfectly fine. And the main reason is because he's a 3-mana 2/3, which specifically like points you into the window of cut down range, and any card that can be cut down, specifically like you can't have your three drop be cut downable. That makes that card fairly unplayable. So, which is
yeah,
probably the reason we don't see it, but that's also because black decks are everywhere and cut down is everywhere. So,
right.
um,
So that's one of the borderline ones. I could see them going either way on it. Like, I think you're right that it wouldn't be too good or anything, but it had its time. Like, it
yeah.
was in plenty of standard decks
Oh, I gotcha.
for a
I see
good
what you're
year or
saying. Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
there, right? So I could see them, it depends on their philosophy with this banning. I think if it were me, I would get rid of it just because it's like, I don't want to get rid of a bunch of cards, then people just go back to the cards they knew were good
Hmm.
a year ago or whatever.
Sure, 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 sure.
Um, but, you know, I wouldn't shed a tear if that was around. But I think for the most part, their stated goal is to build non-mid-range decks, buff those up a bit. And I think one easy way to do that is just leave all the tribes, leave ninjas. Okay, you don't need,
Hmm.
what are you going to ban from ninjas? Maybe Kaito because it was part of like Esper
No,
Planeswalkers, but even that's,
that's not a good deck, and
a little
just
crazy.
just leave that together. Yeah, yeah, I agree. I like the tribes angle. Only ban the ones that are seen outside of tribe play. So that's like Blood
Mhm.
Dive Harvester, like we said before. Um, uh, Voltaire and Epicure, get rid of that card. It's been too oppressive. I'm just kidding. Sorry, I'm just thinking about vampires that are actually
I was
playing
gonna
today.
say it's been in every deck I've built. You're right.
Yeah,
It
you're right.
needs to go.
It's just way too good. Um, no, but
It's
I think.
basically 3-man inspector, but actually a little better because it does 1 damage. But
I don't know. Thraben Inspector wins in combat, so um, I'll probably go with that. Also, it's white, so it's just like it's just way
whoa,
better. Yeah, you just drank the beer for the first time.
yeah, took a big sip.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um, sorry, the beer's throwing me off a little bit, so like I'm trying to stay on track. Um,
um, Now, one thing they did say was we are going to extend to 3 years to give us more time to sort of help the theme decks, like help
mhm.
they called it like color one, color two, X, like, green, white, uh,
Something
in in fact,
toxic. Yeah.
toxic. That's the word. Um, I don't know how that works with tribes. Like, it's going to be really hard for them to print more ninjas support,
Hmm.
but they could print, just more tempo-y cards. They could throw a ninja in here or there, I guess. Ninja's like very specific to Kamigawa. Um,
Well, remember that now the planes are all linked, so you could find a ninja on another plane.
there you go. There
So it
you go.
doesn't really
Right.
matter anymore. Um,
Okay, so that it's all coming together on why they linked the planes and
yeah.
stuff too. Um, yeah, so then definitely they should just leave the tribes around. So if you have like a favorite tribe, Um, it's probably not going to be tier one out the gates. It probably would
Mhm.
need the support of um, whatever sets are to come, but it's probably a lot more playable than it will have been before the ban. And I'm kind of banking on stuff like Arlen Cord, probably doesn't need to
Sure.
get banned. So that's an interesting card that's plenty powerful that just never really saw any play.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, definitely. I wonder what they're going to do if there's going to be any like are they just giving us a soldiers versus knights battle in Azorius because we know that like that's a tier deck that's going to be in the tournament. Are they going to ban something from Azorius soldiers to make way for Azorius Knights? Because specifically, they were saying that like they want space for the Wilds of Eldraine cards to be viable.
I thought,
Now,
like, I think Denick is gone.
oh, for sure, okay. Denick isn't even one of
That's
the great ones, but
if it
like
were up to me.
that's really it. That's the oldest one.
And Thalia. If it were up to me, Thalia's gone too. I know
I
that a lot of soldiers lists don't even play it anymore, but
no, but I
because
think
they're trying to play counter magic.
yeah, but I think Thalia. That's a great like thought. Like yeah, let's get rid of Thalia, change that stuff up. The lands were becoming really interesting to me. I think the channel lands are starting to
No, get rid of it.
yeah they've weighed on me a bit. I'm ready for them to go. Um,
They were cool. I enjoyed them being around, to be honest. They're going to be in every other format for people
mhm,
that love those lands and still want to play them. We don't need them in standard anymore. Like
yeah.
similar to how I felt with the creature lands, the single colored creature lands.
Mhm.
I like these cards. I put them in, but I put every deck started with auto include a couple of these because they're just better than Swamp or just better than
Yeah.
Island or whatever. Um, and just changes the metagame to have them go. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny playing like I think I was playing back in a Explorer or something and being like, oh yeah, these don't come into play the same as like fast lands. Right. They
right,
have to be your
they're not
one or
quite the
two.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The first or second card and not the third land. But anyway, um, but yeah, I think some of those things they can go. Um, but besides
yeah.
that,
I
I
know
mean
it's
like
supposed to be.
I was just gonna say
Go ahead.
what are we expecting as far as a ban list goes? Like, are we expecting 10 cards? Like that seems high to
I'm
me.
no, I'm thinking a ton. I'm thinking
Yeah.
this is essentially rotation. That's how I would handle it. I'd rotate out everything, um, and just leave stuff that nobody's played,
Hmm.
basically. Uh, Now that depends. It just change. You have to change the way you're thinking about ban list, I guess. I'm thinking of it. This replaces rotation, and
Gotcha.
the idea is that we only rotate cards out that people were playing in
Hmm.
some whatever their internal number they've decided is like this is the amount of play it has to have seen, and then just everything on that list gets cut. It
Yeah.
could also go the other approach of we're just always going to get rid of like the 10 biggest oppressors or like the 10 biggest most played cards kind of thing, because if you like you're right, if you're thinking of it as a traditional ban list, then banning 10 cards at one time is a lot.
Yes.
I'm honestly not sure that banning 10 cards is enough to not just put us into a state we've been in before.
Hmm.
um like I'm not, it would definitely shake things up. There's just banning Fable would shake things up, but would it banning Fable just pushes us back into playing decks that were good, like Esper Legends is now just the best deck.
Hmm.
Okay, great. And then we go back to okay, what decks were good before Red Black kind of took over, and we just build those. I think you need more than 10 cards to avoid doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That being said, like I could see them going either way. I would prefer just like
A
everything.
huge one, just a
Yeah.
giant thing. I just like for whatever reason feel like they're not gonna do some huge sweeping thing. Like they
And I
will.
understand it's a lot to track, especially when their target is paper players. On
Mhm,
Arena, it doesn't matter. Like it tells me what I'm allowed to play or not.
yeah. So when they want to specifically look at a paper player and be like, hey, these are the three cards you can't play anymore. You can't play Fable the Mirror Breaker, you can't play Invoke Despair, and you can't play Shieldred. And like that's like those are the cards that they chose.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it would be nice. Like, it's so funny to think now that, like, you know what? If there was like a blue red spells deck, I'd be kind of okay with that now. Like, after, after like it used to like rain so much terror for so long.
I definitely still wouldn't be okay with a blue-red turns deck.
No, no, no. I specifically said
No more.
spells. I'm not
Yeah,
talking
I
about
know. I'm just
turns.
saying, like,
Yeah,
no more taking extra turns. Don't ever print that shit again.
just like take it off the cards,
Yeah,
or
just don't make them. Just stop it. There's for people who are in like the older formats. There's enough.
yeah,
They can build an extra turns deck. They have
or whatever.
options. Like,
Though I think this is just completely off topic altogether, but I do like the extra turns that the red ones that either like actually kill you, not like the cleave where
that's
you don't
okay. Yeah,
actually don't. Or what if there was a black one that was like when your life goes below 0, you take an extra turn and your life is now 1 or something.
you get that one turn to like
Yeah.
right.
So like you like die or you pay
Yeah, that
enough
kind of
life.
stuff would be fine.
So
But
much
no,
more
just
interesting.
no, just like take an extra
Hey,
turn. The
yeah.
cost doesn't matter. You can't make it
Yeah.
expensive enough. It's still stupid.
They're like, but it costs 10 mana. So that just like they will find a way. Like it
It's
doesn't
not going to
matter.
matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if it costs 20 mana? 20 mana, take an extra turn.
Yeah. Tell me.
Yeah, it won't matter. Naturally, they'll just figure it out. But yeah, as I'm thinking about old standards, I'm like, just the blue red menace we had for so long, and now blue is this like this little crippled little like blue, and then green is like nothing. Like we have
Yeah.
no big green stompy deck that we've had ages ago, even with like Pelucranos and some other um, interesting stuff going on.
Yeah. Now that is a deck that could be a winner from these bans, right?
Yes,
Like there's still plenty of power in mono green stompy. It lost obviously some of its like incredible two drops, I guess.
that
Or
was
it could if yeah, I mean, trying to think of what the curve looks like in my head. Maybe it's not as awesome as I thought. It lost one drops, right?
the one drops right now are like the werewolf, the
Mm-hmm.
that gets bigger. You could play
Or it's
the
just a wolf, right?
yeah, sorry, the wolf that gets bigger, and then there's the teething wormling
Right.
uh, that likes artifacts, and then evolving the dude that gets oil counters and gets +1/+1 every time you play a creature. This bigger power toughness. That seems
Oh
like
yeah, so like
viable.
they lost collector, but they got that thing.
Hmm. So similar things. Um, but I still think like Pelucrino seems good enough. Like I'm surprised that that card's like not anywhere.
Yeah, it's not an I don't think mono green is like embarrassing. I think currently it's probably not embarrassing, but probably just gets dunked on by red black. So
Just because
how is it ever gonna show up?
removal is so strong right now. Like black
Yeah,
is the best color, and that means that the best removal is the best color. So
right.
that was something that was talked about in the video, specifically explaining like it's not that black their answers are too strong, which I kind of insinuated earlier with like cut down. It's more so that
Mhm.
like black's the thing that black is best at is creature removal, and it's just the best color right now. So that means that like creature removal is at its pinnacle, which means that green decks are bad because their strength
Yeah,
is being like creatures.
Okay.
And that's just like the
Very
ebb and
succinct way to put it.
yeah, that's like the ebb and flow of how things go. And it's not necessarily that like Doomblade is too powerful. It's just that like that just happens. The most
It's just that
oppressive,
we printed a series of insane black cards.
yes, that are all together, and so that you have like,
Yeah.
yeah, you have to figure out which ones you're going to play. The issue with black right now is that they have a sorcery that takes care of enchantments and planeswalkers, which black
It's
traditionally
supposed to be their weakness, especially enchantments.
enchantments. So that is the reason, like diversifying your threats is usually how you destroy black. And since they have a card that stops that, where you have to like double diversify, it's insane. And now that they figured out a way to copy invoke despair,
Yeah.
means like this just you can't play planeswalkers against them, like you're screwed.
Yeah.
So
Unless it's up next to this, because then you have two and there'll be one left over after they cast it.
yeah, but I mean, like if they as soon as they like go like Chandra into invoke despair, then they kill
Yeah,
both copies at once. So
Chandra's ridiculous.
yeah, she's
Um,
fucking nuts.
yeah, so anyways, definitely tribal. Okay. That's
Okay,
big on the
okay,
list of
back on the
stuff to
train.
keep around.
Tribal.
Now you're starting to convince me that they're gonna do this wimpy ban list with like two or
Hmm.
three cards, and um,
All right,
it beats the purpose of this because it's just gonna be all the same stuff that you've
it's
seen
true.
before.
I mean, I do believe that they will have a wimpy ban announcement. Like it's going to be like 5 cards or less. But for a thought experiment, let's just pretend that it's
Yeah.
actually rotation. Let's think
To
of it.
assume it was proper and it was well, I want it to be pseudo rotation, right? I want it to be like what shouldn't they rotate? You know what I mean? Like they're gonna rotate, what should they leave if they
Yeah.
leave?
Yeah, so you're right. They should definitely leave all the like if there's a zombie deck in standard, I want um Champion of the Perished to be a card that actually like made a splash. That was
Mhm.
upsetting. Um I was really hoping that we'd have a sweet like Bant deck from New Capena. I wanted some like counter synergies with some like endless detours and all that kind of stuff going on. Bant never ended up being a deck that ever cracked standard,
For
just
sure.
because that
And
was.
and Endless Detour, I think, is a perfect example of a card that, like, let's say you were doing the let's ban everything that in sight that we think we
Hmm.
could. Um, Endless Detour, you would leave because it's a powerful card. So it's super good. When I saw it, I was like, wow, this is really, really strong. It just doesn't seem play because, like you just said, blue and green are kind of the lame colors of the
Hmm.
format. And so, and counter spells, this is sort of a pseudo counter spell,
Yeah.
are kind of at their worst, like we were talking about earlier. So this would be the perfect card to leave if you're trying to shake that up and
Hmm.
leave blue green players their and banned players their powerful option here. Um, I think that's a great example. Is like, sorry, I forget what they're actually called and what family they are in
Yeah,
that,
they're
but like banned players,
yeah. Oh shit, what is it called? Spara is like Spara's headquarters is the land.
right?
Um, but they're the lawmaker people, the lawyers, whatever. Um, God, wow, that just like completely fell out of my head. That's so weird. Um, but anyway, that was something like some of those past standard ideas were like, yeah, I was really interested in these types of things. Um, Wanting like lightning fast red deck to be part of standard, which we've been pushing for a really long time. Um, and honestly, this is like I know this an impossibility, but like, and something I recently thought about because of whatever, but like the white green toxic deck getting hosed by a black card called like glistening oil or something. It's like, okay, so thematically, the Phyrexian toxic player gets hosed by its own oil. I hate it. I'm still mad. I just found another reason to hate
in
it.
the very next set,
Yeah.
and their stated goal is to like move away from mid-range. They're just like, well, here you go, black.
Yeah.
Destroy this like 2-color synergy deck we just injected into the format.
It's like I understand that it obviously like yes, black's enemies in the color play are like white and green, but in the story, like the oil is something that the Phyrexians need, and white and green are big Phyrexian colors. Whatever. I That's just another pet peeve of mine that I wish that they would just ban. Let's
So
just
you want them to ban that card.
just the hoser card for the deck I want to play.
I do think
Uh,
that card was a mistake, but there's obviously like pretty much no chance it gets banned.
yeah, it's zero, absolutely zero.
But another card I wanted to talk about that just like exemplifies the kind of thing that was an issue with previous standard rotation that is like pseudo solved by this move
Mm-hmm.
to an extra year is, for example, Tezzeret. So Tezzeret, Betrayer of Flesh,
Mm-hmm.
saw zero play. I think literally zero play
Yeah.
in terms of like semi-competitive or even semi-competitive standard. But then they just released this new set, which would have been at the very end of his tenure. They released this new set with an incubate mechanic that synergizes like amazingly with his passive to the point where it could actually push into viability. Now, the problem with previous standard was two things. This isn't really worth exploring because there are established decks. You're going to put some time into figuring this out. And even if you do, this card that is central to that idea is rotating. You're going to put 2 months into figuring the deck out, and then it's going to be legal for another two. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
even if that deck was amazing, I don't think the community would ever find it because we just, as a community, like a few people
Yeah.
would have some fun with it. A few content creators will put out a video here or there, but they're not expert deck builders. They have to build decks quickly to make cool videos as soon as
They
that
can.
sort of combo emerges.
Yeah.
And so we get that first initial iteration out quickly, but nobody then spends the time to iterate it on it further, or not enough people do, that this deck gets to where it could be. And then, like I said, maybe this would have been cool. And so if they were to like pseudo rotate all the good cards and leave the cards that nobody played, like Tezzeret, then we could see if this thing is real. And Tesseret's still around for a year, incubates brand new, it's the cool new mechanic. You might actually look into this and hey, maybe you find a cool new deck that you just it wouldn't have been realistic to find that under the old rotation system. So that's the kind of thing that I'm a little excited for with the 3 years. And what they were saying is, it gives us more time to build synergies like that. And because this has happened to me quite a few times where there's a card that I think is cool, it's not really good enough in its set, and then they don't print any support for it. And then finally they print support for it. And I'm like, cool, the very last set before the other card rotates. Like, were you really worried that this was going to be too powerful? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So yeah, Tezzeret's I think a great example of, hey, maybe Tezzeret Incubate is a cool thing.
I think, yeah, that is awesome and also really interesting because blue is not necessarily like the incubate color. There's like a couple
Right.
things, but
So
it's not.
what are you playing? Like Esper or
Yeah, or like
maybe even Bant,
Sultai. Um,
Sultai,
if you're going big, uh, which seems super fun. Um, I keep going
or
back
even
to
just
think.
blue white, I guess.
Yeah, initially I was thinking blue white, but like in this standard format, you like they're not going to ban all the good removal, so like black still feels like a good option. Um, but I think that like I 100% agree with that. That it's going to be really interesting to see how standard moves through all these different years, and especially with Wilds of Eldraine, because like I think a lot of the bans they're going to make, and they express this as well, but like are specific. Like there will be a couple what the fucks, I think, which will be like I don't understand what this is, and then we'll find out in September. Oh, that's why they banned that card, because they want to make sure these cards can be played or whatever. um
Or
so
like there was some, yeah. there was some outrageous interaction because they didn't expect the two cards to be in standard at the same time when they designed it, right?
Yeah. And I also expect that to happen once the Wilds of Eldraine comes out. They realize, oh shit, I didn't realize all this stuff, because
Right.
they can
Because
only do so much. They don't get nearly as much playtesting as you think that they do. Like they obviously the cards are also changing constantly. So like they obviously playtested a bunch of cards, but like those cards are not the same cards you're playing with when they get released. Like it's even when you hear them talk, like they just don't know the names of stuff because it wasn't called that when they were dealing with it.
yeah,
Um,
that's always funny.
it's hilarious. Like it happened in the last video because like literally this dude Andrew, who's in charge of like all the bands, was talking about March of the Machine Aftermath, but he didn't remember the name of the set because in like design it was called Epilogue. And so he's like, yeah, for
Right.
the epilogue or whatever it's called now. I don't know. It's just like it's so funny to see like people just be like, oh yeah, I have no idea what this is called. Like
Right.
because they just like don't announce things.
They're like, and that black card, we called it Toxic Hoser. I forget what
But
it's
like
actually
yeah,
called, but yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like that's the kind of shit that I think is really interesting, but also going to be something we'll see uh, going forward into this. Like definitely a bunch of cards will be like, what the hell is this? But like I still think that it will be a small number because ultimately it's all about paper players. It's not about arena players. So they want the least amount of cards banned while shaking up the format as most as they possibly can. So
Yeah. I don't have too much faith in that stated goal. I think they should ban a ton of stuff, but
yeah,
happy to be proven wrong. Like, if they can do it, that'd be cool. I'm just looking through some of the past few sets. I'm like, okay, if they ban 5 cards, like I can list 10 just from looking at a few of the sets that we've rotated. That's like, you need to ban these
yeah. I think it's
to
also
truly make the format feel different.
I think it'll feel different, but it may not be exactly what we're hoping. I think it will be interesting in years to come to see how we feel with standard as it is. It's just going to be. It's just going to feel different. It's going to be way too many cards, and there's always going to be cards that we wish were uh, were able to be played. Like that's just always going to happen.
For sure, for sure.
So
I just think like you ban 5 cards, like how is it not going to still be black mid range suit? You telling me you can get away from black mid range with 5 cards? Like, let me list a card for you here. Okay, you may
mhm.
have forgotten about this. Um, it's called Tenacious Underdog. I don't
Sure,
know
yeah.
if you remember this card, but this card was everywhere. Oh, it's
Mhm.
too good. It's too good. It's too good. When's the last time you saw anyone play this card and everyone plays black mid range? It's just
It,
you're just gonna go back to the versions that have this card. Like it's gonna be mono black or something. It's gonna have this and Liliana and like whatever. It's like you can't get out of they've done so much. There's the black mid-range roster is so deep, and you have to allocate one of your slots to banning Fable for sure. The other one is probably going to be Reckoner Bank Buster because it's just colorless and it's just
mhm.
people don't like it. Um, People feel like they need to play a ton of it. Um, Probably if you're banning a black card too, it's also like Invoke Despair, right? Which is like, is Invoke Despair even that? Like, it is a little dumb that it destroys enchantments.
The enchantment clause, yeah.
But is it that good without Fable? Where Fable is really what's letting you cast that in multicolor decks and always like you just always have treasure tokens, so you can always make sure that you can cast this thing. Um,
Yeah, I feel like they'll just do it anyway. Honestly,
for
the cards
sure.
that if they want to stop Rakdos mid range from being a deck, they just need to ban like Haunted Ridge, Sulphurous Springs, just like
It is now banned to play both mountain and swamp in your deck.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
We now ban playing red and black cards in your deck.
Red
You get
and
to
black
choose
cards.
one. It's one
Yeah,
or the other.
It's not both.
Yeah.
So I think that's the only way, but like honestly, if they do more than 10 cards, I will be shocked. I was
But like it's just
shocked.
gonna go back to the standard, the typical
Yeah.
Esper lists, right? Like it's
Yeah.
the Esper mid range that used to dominate.
Yep.
Are people happier with that?
I don't know.
Like
We'll have to find
maybe
out.
the people that recently lost to Fable, but I don't know. That doesn't seem it doesn't seem worth the trade-off of decks lasting an extra year if that's all we get as the big banning rotation to me.
Well, yes. I think that like the point of the big ban, honestly, it just seems like to be a time of the year where they can get rid of the problem cards, like the actual ones that people are like have issues with before spoiler season for the new exciting set, and then people can they can look at the cards from the new set and know what type of standard they're going into, as in like you don't want to be like figuring out combos with the card that's going to be banned, so that's why they're doing it before spoiler season. But
Yeah,
also
I appreciate the timing of it.
yeah,
I think
which
that
is
makes
nice.
sense.
But like I again, like the point of this is so that people know that they can buy cards. And so why would they ban a ton of stuff if they could that are like borderline bannable, and they could ban fewer amounts of cards so that people
Because
feel
banning more stuff gets people to buy more cards because they're not selling Streets of New Japan anymore. They're
yeah.
not selling Neon Dynasty.
Sorry, what I meant is that they're trying to sell the idea that you can buy into standard and your cards won't be rotated or banned, so that you feel comfortable playing it. Is their initial approach until later. So I just don't think the first one's going to be like huge. You know what I mean? I know I want it to be huge. I'm not saying I don't want it to be huge. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I just think if this 3 year thing is going to work, it needs to be bigger.
Okay. All right.
I don't think the players like. I think this is exactly what we talked about. Players don't know what they want. The players telling you they don't play standard because they're worried about cards rotating. I guarantee you the number of people that will do that when it's 3 years, but wouldn't do it at 2 is minuscule. Like it's just the idea of rotation, not the time. And so you're not gonna see an increase in paper players who wouldn't have played because 2 years is not long enough for my standard cards. I don't think they obviously have some sort of data, they've done something,
Yeah.
and they believe that they will. But everything I know about Magic players and the type I know these players who say that about standard, like
Well,
everything that I know, they wouldn't play at 3.
well, they're playing
So
commander anyway. Like they're not.
right, that like
Yeah.
you've
Or
lost
eternal.
them. You've lost them already.
Just the idea of
And,
yeah, it's true. It's true. I think the idea of rotation is like not exciting to them. Um,
mhm.
and it's just all downside. It's like, oh, I can't play in these things.
Like I think those players do exist that won't play at 2 and will play at 3, but I think they're really small cross section, like
Yeah.
really small. I think it's generally you're okay with standard. You think it's cool, you want to keep up with it, or you just don't like the idea.
Yeah. I just think that like if they're doing this at all, they believe that it's big enough that they're going to make a significant margin in sales, and that their main talking point for doing it at all is that they're going to keep the rotation slash bands small, so
Yeah.
people feel
A little
comfortable.
surprised that outweighs the idea of I have my black red mid range deck. I don't have to spend wildcards on arena for 3 years. Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, but
maybe it does. Like people just do anyways, I guess. But
I guess that is true, because like to me, the reason I play arena is because I can play top decks without spending as much money as in
right,
paper.
you can change decks
Yes.
quickly and stuff.
Like if I was going to play Rakdos mid range in paper, I'd have to spend like $700 at least.
Yeah.
Like, and that money's not going to Wizards. That money's going to local game stores who are selling that at a premium price. Shieldred for Wizards costs the same amount as every other card.
Right.
Like I'm not buying it from them. So then, why would Wizards want me to buy a playset of Shieldred for $400? That's an interesting dilemma.
Yeah,
Maybe
I'm not totally sure what they're going after here. Obviously, they've thought about it. They've put a
yeah.
lot of effort into this.
Jeff, you mean you
Uh,
can't tell me about the math behind this? Come on.
if they give me their data, I'll tell you exactly
Yeah.
what's going on.
We should just ask them for it because I want you to break it down for me because um
You know what? I'll just ask ChatGPT.
oh, they can tell you for sure.
I'm sure they've uploaded a data frame to ChatGPT by accident to ask about some problem they
Something.
were running into.
Should we change standard to 3 years? ChatGPT's like, absolutely. The player base really believes that that's what you should do.
ChatGPT's like, upload your data set. They're like, no. And then I'm like, hey, did Wizards send you a data set? Like, yes.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much. It's like, oh, you probably shouldn't share that with me because of this, but like, we're friends, right? Or whatever. Man, this is way off topic, but ChatGPT stuff seems to be going off right now. You see that thing about the college professor who is checking their students' essays on ChatGPT, literally putting in the information and being like, "Did you write this for them?" And ChatGPT just being like, "Yes, I did," and then them failing the student, even though that was incorrect because ChatGPT can lie. And
Yeah,
like,
I did not hear about that. That's ridiculous. Like, how would ChatGPT know whether it wrote it for something or not?
it's
Like,
it's just like a professor not understanding what ChatGPT does and just
right. It thinks it's like a sentient being
yeah, it's
that
like
has memory
has talks
of
to every
like,
person.
right.
It's just like, and so there's a like an entire class of people who failed this final because the professor believes that every single person used ChatGPT to write their essay, and you're like,
It clearly
what?
wasn't the statistics course.
No, no. I'm pretty sure it was. Probably not a science course, I think, but anyway, just like
Yeah, the word essay already
yeah,
suggests
just
that.
that's not really part of it.
I didn't do a lot of essay writing in my
Yeah, and
time.
you for time as a math student, um, but yeah, I just crazy. Honestly, all ChatGPT needs to do now is just like make better cards, like magic cards. We have uh, computer programs that make fake magic cards, but they just are completely incoherent and just like not useful. I want functional cards. I want a set of functional cards that ChatGPT made. That
One
like
day.
one day,
That's ChatGPT 5. That's what they're
ah,
working on right now to
it's
bring it to the
probably
next level.
if that was a secret layer, I would probably buy it.
Oh my
Like,
god! Even if it made no sense,
yeah.
I don't know. They'd have to get sign off from Microsoft or some shit on that. I think,
Oh, I bet. I
or
bet.
OpenAI.
I mean, like, obviously, that's a whole thing with like artists and everything and all that stuff, and like what is art and whether it's like blah blah blah, and that ChatGPT is a tool and not a person. I understand all that stuff, but I think it would be pretty funny to see if ChatGPT could make its own little like cube or something, or plug in all the magic cards ever and be like, hey, build a cube, and they don't design cards, they just see how they work together and like put something together, or build new formats. That could be interesting. um,
Sure.
anyway, that is my random offshoot from whatever we
Yeah.
were talking about before, but
Bring us back a little. I've just sort of been looking through the card image galleries for some of the
Mhm.
sets that ought to have rotated. So another card, this is kind of on the Tezzeret vein of
Yeah.
there's cool new interactions and we should leave it and let it be explored. But Ginny Fey, Jetmir's second.
Yeah.
So she creates whenever you would create a token, you can either make like a 2/2 hasty cat or a 3/1 vigilance dog instead. Obviously, is like really cool with Incubate because Incubate makes all these tokens. And
Ooh,
remember, an Incubate token comes with +1/+1 counters on it.
that's
And
true.
so, like when you make this into a 2/2 cat, if you incubate 2, it's a 4/4 cat because it does come with those counters. Like, so this is just a really cool old card that would have rotated just a few months after this awesome synergy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a card that's seen no play. So it would have been a real shame. But now it's like, hey, they're not going to ban this, or they shouldn't. And unless it behaves really strangely with a Wilds of Eldraine card. And so maybe there's some sort of like green light, red light, Naya incubate thing out there that after the bans could start to see a little more play. Because obviously, there are a few cards out there that make tokens less than ideal at the moment, as
Yeah.
general strategy.
Yeah.
Um, but hey, maybe with enough bannings, this
That
card could be.
I mean, Jimmy Faye had like a blip of like excitement like early on, which was really like cool.
Right.
And, and obviously, like the things that we're interested in is just like churn, like keeping things fresh, keeping things interesting, playing against different types of cards. Those are all like that's what we want. Like that's most of like Magic, right? Oh my god, yeah. Get rid of Smoldering Egg. I don't need to see that card in the field again. Even though I literally just talked about like is it spells decks, but I was wondering
Yeah.
like we were talking about Bant cards earlier, and in general, any Bant list you saw had Storm the Festival at the top end, and
Right.
like I feel like that card never really got to it. Was like it was seen and it was like doing some stuff, but it never really like landed there. Like it wasn't the card. You're just
Yeah.
obviously it is in Pioneer, or it can be, but like it's just one of those things that like yeah, that like that when you're talking about your list of cards that you want to be banned because they might be the best thing. Storm of the Festival is such an interesting one because like it was never the best card or the best deck, but it has seen play in standard and people are really obsessed with it. And so is that a card that you would put on your list of like get out of here, let's not play that? Or is it one of the ones that's like, oh, we could open up space and we could play Storm of the Festival?
That one I would leave, I think. I think
Okay.
like for me the deciding factor is generally like would people be happy that I left this? Like let's just suppose it's a card that's been around a while and has seen a significant amount of play or a healthy
Mm-hmm.
amount of play. Would this be a card that people would be happy that I'm leaving? Um, and I think this one would be generally yes. Like
Yeah.
this is a big expensive sorcery, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
super easy to deal with this. Um, you just hit it with make disappear, and then there's some field ads. And this has the general problem of it's in a big expensive sorcery, so you want to ramp into it, but it's not good with ramp cards. Like
Yes.
uh, it wants permanence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've played enough of these decks where it's like, haha, my big payoff for doing this strategy. I play Storm the Festival and I hit 2 mana dorks or like a mana dork in the land. I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
uh-huh. Yeah, 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 yeah. I
Yep.
mean, that's my deck. Can't get too mad. I wish there was a Ren and 7. But even hitting like Ren and 7 plus mana dork, not that good.
No.
Right? So that's kind of this card has some inherent deck building constraints on it that you want to ramp into it,
Mm-hmm.
but the more you devote to ramping into it, the weaker the card becomes, which I think is super cool design.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but generally doesn't keep up with today's game. You need shit that is just amazing, and then you
Yeah.
need stuff that ramps into that amazing thing.
That's true because like the thing that we're playing right now that is like similar to that is literally just a Tali that like also plays your opponent's deck, and if you don't hit anything, at least you have a 7/7 trample that could turn into like a fucking Blightsteel Colossus. So,
Yeah.
um,
And even that I'm not totally sold on as being that good. So it's like, is this worth devoting my deck to?
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
So I would leave that card. But again, like I think there would be a lot of judgment calls. I mean, more I talk about it, the more I think they're just not going to do this. But I think it's what they should do, and I don't think it actually necessarily gets in the way of their stated goal of make people feel safer about rotation. Because first of all, you can target a lot of like uncommons and stuff. I mean, who cares?
That's true.
Like just chalk, fill out your list with like uncommons. But yeah, I think you're right that realistically they're going to ban like two or three cards that are all from the same deck, and any one of like just banning Fable would probably have been enough, but you have to satisfy people's outrage.
Hunger, yeah.
And then there's going to be a couple of strange bans that will make sense later, and then that's going to be it. And the format's going to go back to like it's just going to still be black mid range soup.
Yeah, I you know what? I was kind of starting this episode like super excited for this like this,
Me
this
too, but
whole
I thought
era.
there was going to be a mass banning, but you kind of convinced me
I'm
that
pretty
it's not.
positive that's not going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I I don't
Because I was
think
like, what would I do if I was designing for what I want,
yeah, and
rather than what are they going to do based on what they said they are going to, what they said they would.
yeah, what they explained that was their like goal and stuff. So I never think that like the big banning in August is going to be feeling like rotation. But if they're like, hey, mainly I think it's going to be like, hey, is this card in every single format? All right, let's just get rid of it then, or at least rip it from a few. Um, so Fable and Shieldred are cards that are in a ton of formats. They're just like, hey, look at this fucking thing. Let's take get rid of it. Anyway, so kind of ending on a downer a little bit, but that's okay. That happens.
Children, another card that just doesn't match what people say doesn't match my experience. When people are like, it's one of those must kill threats. I'm just like, I've won so many games where Shieldred's been out for multiple turns. So it's like doesn't link up with me. I think people just hate it. So people just hate it, even though it's realistically just a powerful. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like it's not outrageously busted. It is not a card that if you don't kill it right away, you lose. I don't know where that came from. Like you don't kill it right away, there's like a 2 point drain. If you kill it one turn later, right? It's a
it's
2 point drain.
it's true.
Otherwise, it's a 4 or 5. Like, give me a break.
Yeah. So there's a thing like I am trying to end this episode a little bit, but there is a thing that you should be thinking of when you're playing against black decks, which is just about everything, or in
Yeah.
just you should
So
just
when you're playing standard.
when you're playing standard, um, don't leverage your life total as much as you normally would because you're expecting Shieldred to come down and kill you. Like, don't let yourself like take the hits to go below 10. Just like don't do it. Like figure out ways because once you let yourself go to like 8, then being having a Shieldred on the battlefield ends up being a bigger issue. And so I think that's what's happening is that like I am used to racing people with my life and getting in a situation where Shieldred kills me all the time. I think a
And
lot of
putting
people,
no life gain in my deck at all.
yes,
Or
and
yeah,
knowing that like I if I go to 4 man like 4 life, I can't come back. Like I don't have anything that helps me like life gain, and playing in a way that like I'm expecting to be able to stabilize at that life total because you just won't. That
yeah,
that turns Shieldred into a must kill because you have made a situation where you have to kill Shieldred because of the way you've been playing and building your deck.
for
So
sure.
I
I guess I'm
agree.
sitting over here with Anvil, which gains me plenty of
Yes.
life. I have chunk blockers in the
Yes.
galore for the stupid shield. It doesn't do anything against me except
Yes.
annoy me when I am making the decision on chapter 2 of my Fable.
The most annoying thing I think with Shieldred is in that deck is that they're gaining life. That's the thing that you don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and to you, 4 mana 4/5 that lets them gain life is not a big deal, but it's like kind of annoying. Where I'm like, all right, I will race you, and then they play Shieldred. I'm like, okay, I can't race you anymore, and now I'm dead. that's what happens. Um,
Yeah.
Also, it makes Fairy Mastermind really bad. Which,
Well, you
I,
flash it in with children on the stack, I guess.
yeah, but sometimes I have it out already, and then they play Shielded. I'm like, oh no. And then they're like, here's my Fable. I'm going to draw some cards. I'm like, uh-oh, I just have to draw 2 cards. I just lost 4 life because you decided I was going to lose 4 life. That's bad. Um,
Yeah. And it feels like a bummer of a ban to me because it's a card that I don't think is too powerful, but I think is too ensconced in the like hatred of the
yes.
community that it must occupy one of the slots.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's going to die for the sins of other players or cards or like other issues, but
And
I
even
think
just Fable, like just the fact that it synergizes so well with Fable, like
mhm.
when that's
And
gone, the
Invoke
card gets
Despair.
weaker.
Like an Invoke Despair being like, I get to draw cards, also fuck you because your life, and also gain a bunch of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Right.
anyway,
And so like if you just got rid of those 2 cards, you probably don't need to get rid of children. But what do you they're probably gonna get rid of all 3.
also drawing cards just like the other card that we don't like is Regular Big Monster, and that also draws cards, which also goes with Shieldred, blah, 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 blah. So just get rid of any card that says draw a card, then we're fine. Um, that's the mass ban.
I'm fine with that because my cards say exile and then you may play.
Yeah. Hey, in front of the ban hammer that way. Jeff, I think we've talked enough about this. We will have to see what happens after the tournament. But let's go to last call and talk about the beers we had this evening because they were interesting. At least one of them was extremely interesting. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So as we go into this, as always, we rate our beers on a scale of bronze to mythic, just like the tiers in Arena. And this has nothing to do with whatever tier you are in currently, because tiers don't really matter because you should probably be playing events, which doesn't change your tier level because they're just for fun. And that's why we rate beers just like the tiers. With that being said, bronze beers are trash. They're horrible. You can't drink them. You have to spit them out. You have to pour them on the ground because you can't stomach it. It's gonna make you puke.
Yeah. Silver beers are basically just kind of boring. Macro brews tend to fall into this category.
Um, what do we? Gold. Gold's next. Gold beers are fine, but you probably won't drink them very often.
And platinum is totally solid, and you'll drink it again.
Yeah. Diamond beers are exceptional. You will bring them to parties, show them to your friends, drink them a lot.
And mythic, these are the best of the best. These are the fable of the mirror breakers of the beer world.
Yes, ban-worthy beers.
That's right.
Um, Jeff,
Although if it were up to me, we'd be banning all the way to gold.
all the way. All right, Jeff, do you know which beer you're going to pick for this evening?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know which one you're going to pick too. Probably, but here you go.
I think you'll be surprised.
Interesting. Now you're making me second guess. No, I'm going to pick the one I was going to pick.
Okay.
All right, okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Where are you?
Ladybug. So I was expecting you to pick that beer.
I know. That's
yes.
why I was trying to throw you off.
You did throw me off. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. We're going to talk about Ladybug because this beer.
It's the opposite of an elephant.
I'm picking this one because for 2 reasons. I'll get to the other beer in a second. But this one definitely stood out more than any other beer we've had from this company so far, and is the strangest and most different one. However, the rating is going to be weird because of that. Because holy shit, is this beer smoky? This is the smokiest beer I've ever had in my entire life. I don't think I've had anything like this.
Yeah. So I have to say that that's what the very first thing I was going to say about this beer, because when you first sip it, it just hits you like everywhere in the nose and like it just kind of hits you in the face, like you put your head over a fire and smoke. Um, I liked that a lot because generally I found when I go and taste a smoky beer, or smoke this, smoke that, I really have to search for that. I'm like, is that what they think? Okay, I guess it
Hmm.
kind of tastes like, like I guess I'm more used to whiskey where if they say it's a peaty or
Oh, it's
that
there.
shit tastes like campfire.
Hmm.
Um, and so I really appreciated this. Said it was smoked, and yeah, it's smoked. Like, I was
Yeah,
expecting it to basically be like, maybe there's a hint that I'm not sure if it's just because they told me it was smoked. I think I'm tasting that.
yeah.
But really, it tastes like cherries. That's kind of what I was expecting from this.
I was also expecting that. I don't really taste cherries. It's
Yeah,
mainly smoke.
that's actually the next thing I was going to say. I was like, but like, I don't taste the other thing they said. I'm praising them for I actually can taste the first thing they told me I should taste, but I actually can't taste the other thing they told me I should taste, which is cherries. It tastes like a smoked grisette, like a grisette's kind
Hmm.
of like a farmhouse.
Yeah,
I think of it as just sort of equivalent to farmhouse. I think there's a technically slight difference,
a
but
difference, but
like a French kind of farmhouse ale, and this one has some smoke to it, and that's exactly what this was. And apparently, there's cherries.
yeah. But I think it was really interesting. I'm definitely going to show this to other people because
Yeah,
it's a flavor and a style I haven't ever experienced. Um, so I'm definitely going to remember it. Very cool.
yeah.
And
And like you said, this one's hard to rate because I liked it. I
it's
thought it was good, but I don't know how often I'll actually go back and get this.
yeah.
And
Um,
I'll recommend it to people. I think it was, better than fine. Gold is like fine, but probably won't drink it again.
yeah.
It was better than fine. It was good beer, but then I probably won't drink it that often.
Yeah. It's definitely not the kind of beer that I want two of. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like this is the beer that like I'm gonna bring it to a tasting where it's like, hey, let's all just grab some glasses and drink a bunch of different beers. Like this is the beer I would want to show
Like
people.
the perfect like flight beer.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's like a flight beer. Um, so like, where do you put that? It's so difficult. So I don't know. It would honestly be like in our ratings and how we've done things is probably platinum, but
Yeah.
like I would want it to show people the beer knowing that it's like high risk high reward basically. Like either
Right.
this the person I'm giving this to is going to fucking hate this and never believe it ever something I say to them about beer again, or they're
Yeah.
going to love it and they're going to be like, wow, that's so interesting, that's so cool, what other weird shit do you have for me to try. um
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was going to give this platinum, but
yeah,
I think there's like a number. There's a number of ratings that I think you could reasonably give this.
for sure, for sure. Let's go to the horse picture that looked like a mountain. um
Right.
where you
Actually, the other
can't
thing I was
follow.
going to say is definitely can't label this silver. Boring. That was like the only
Oh,
one that you couldn't
definitely
label the
not.
smoked grisette.
Like
Yeah.
never, no.
I
No,
could
no, no.
I could see you making an argument for almost any other rating. If you really hated it, it could be wrong. But like
For
you
sure.
can't say it's silver.
No. It's definitely not a Budweiser. Um but yeah, sorry, let's talk about the triple that you picked. Now it's close to picking
Yes.
two.
Right. Yeah, I thought this was a good triple. It's a style that I really like, and I have some favorites in
Hmm.
mind
Yeah.
uh,
I do
when
I
I
do
think
too.
of this style.
Yeah.
And so I sometimes I worry, like if I ever have a new one, am I just comparing? Am I just like, oh, it's different from this other one that I like, and um, you know what I mean? Like I'm judging it for just not being exactly the same as the one I
Hmm.
happen to like, probably because I tried it first, kind of thing. So I'm
Yeah.
always a bit conscious of that when I try triples. And so I'm trying to look for like, is it just a well-made beer? Is it an example of the style? Does it taste like I expect the triple to taste? And I think this one does for sure. It does taste a little different from some of the ones that I have as like my mythic ideals in the
Yeah.
back of my head. Um, and I honestly, the first couple of sips I took, I was a little unsure. but I really hit my stride with it after that, where I was like, oh no, actually, I just like this. This is good. But I could see there was an element, I don't know even how to put my finger on it, but there was just some little taste in there that I could see being off-putting for people. Um, but I kind of
Interesting.
grew to like it.
Yeah, I just remember it being different than I was expecting. It was like lighter in color.
Yeah,
The mouthfeel was also light, and it wasn't as a lot of times triples feel like a bit more. They just feel
fruitier.
like like a little bit heavier. I and the alcohol content was like uh, definitely a secret in this one. Like if I drank
Yeah,
that and you said that it was like 5, I would be like, okay, sure. But like a 9, like you did not taste that. Like the body wasn't there for like what you would expect a 9% to be. And also some triples where you're like, oh yeah, holy shit, like this is a bit of a smack in the mouth. This one felt very smooth. It was a very smooth triple. It had a lot of those notes in it, but they were like much more tame, and so
right.
it felt like similar to the single we had last week, um, but like just bumped up just a
A
bit, but
little
like
more put you on your ass.
yeah, but not nearly as explosive as what I was expecting,
Yeah,
which might have been something that threw me off a little bit. But it was really tasty, and I to the
yeah.
point
I
where
think.
I was just
Go
gonna
ahead.
say to the point where I almost forgot that I was drinking a triple, which like normally I
Right.
can't, because other
Yeah.
ones we've had on the show have been like, yeah, it's we're I mean like we
Oh,
did
that's
go,
big.
to be fair, we did go off the rails in the episode a little bit, so like that's a normal trait for a triple to have on the
Yeah,
episode.
especially when we start with the dribble.
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely have my favorites. This is not one of my favorites. But that doesn't mean that it's not good. So again,
Yeah,
with my rating, I'll probably give it a platinum.
I think that's a good way to explain it was when you mentioned the body. I think that
Hmm.
is what I was tasting. Like it's less body than I'm used to. Um, I am a fan of the when you drink a big beer that it punches you in the mouth. We've kind of mentioned that before. This one
Yeah.
doesn't really do that. It's a little more mellow, and that's why it took me a few more sips to get into it. I still
Yeah.
think I do like those other beers that I'm comparing it to better. But I netted out pretty high on this one actually. I kind of like wish I had more of these in the fridge so
Yeah.
I could try it again and see, okay, now that I kind of know what to expect, what do I think? Because I was just expecting something bigger, punchier. You know, you taste the alcohol, you taste more fruit, you taste more of everything basically. Um, I'm just gonna give this diamond though. I'll let
Love it.
this settle at diamond for me.
Nice. Um, totally. I could see that for sure. Um, it's also, triples. They're great, man.
It's a great beer style.
Yeah, it really is. And Little Beast is a great brewery, which I've been finding out. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm tempering some of my expectations, but like our last two are next week. So stay tuned for those. But Jeff, we should go to closing time. Let's wrap this guy up.
Yeah, let's do it.
So as always, you can find us at Arena Regulars on Twitter and Instagram.
You may find us on MTG Arena itself under the username Arena Regulars Podcast.
If you want to talk to me personally, you can find me at Zulberg. That is Zeulberg on Twitter and Instagram. But Jeff, where can they find you?
Best place is the Discord channel. I go by at Regular Jeff. Love to talk deck lists, talk drafts, post your recent trophies. Love to see all of that. The link for that in the show notes.
And please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Spotify. Leave us a review there. Go to our YouTube channel. Leave us a comment. Give us a like. All the things that you do on those YouTube channels. It helps us out a lot and just gets us to be seen or heard by more people. So give us all the love, please. This has been the Arena Regulars.
Reminding you that the only way to fix standard is to ban people putting both black and red cards in their deck.
Good night.
All right, that's fine.